Welcome. My name is Dana, and these are my Catholic memoirs. So the date is July 7th, the feast day of St. Cyril and Methodius, bishops and confessors. And all the angels and saints, please pray for us. Today I wanted to talk about a more heavy topic, I suppose, and this is on spiritual attacks, which is interesting because this subject I didn't become aware of until more recently, within the last year or so, because I wasn't very this wasn't taught to us in my upbringing since I guess this is just not something that they talk about in CCD, because growing up in a Catholic family, but not having gone to Catholic school, I only had access to CCD, which are like catechism classes through my Catholic church on a week-to-week basis. And I took those classes from like elementary all the way until high school, all the way into high school. And so all those years I didn't really know about them until more recently. And I guess I should explain what a spiritual attack is. And so this is coming from a quick Google search, and I'll be quoting and reading the definition. So in Catholic terms, spiritual attacks are perceived as attacks by spiritual evil forces, including demons, on a person's faith, virtue, and well-being. So these attacks are not just psychological or emotional struggles, but they involve the influence of malevolent spiritual entities that aim to hinder a person's relationship with God and lead them away from virtue. So I really didn't get back into my faith until around 2016, and especially even more in 2019. So 2016, I'll actually go into more detail about my reversion story, but 2016 marked the beginning of my reversion, and then 2019 was when I got married. So right before COVID, my husband and I got married in the Catholic Church, and those were the two pivotal moments of my life in terms of Catholicism. But I will go into I'll go into more detail on that in a different video in the near future. So, but yes, and what that means is what that means in terms of spiritual attacks on my life is I realized that as the more I learned about it, and the more of a rabbit hole I got into it, because there's a lot of really cool videos about exorcists, like Catholic exorcists, who are real exorcists that actually saw like crazy things related to spiritual attacks and demons. Going into that rabbit hole made me contemplate and think about like some points in my life that were difficult or challenging, and whether they were related to spiritual attacks or just things like mental health issues or just health issues in general. So one time that I remember that made me think about it could be a possibility for spiritual attacks was, I think it was like the last year or so, I was actually plagued with laryngitis several times in the last year or so, pretty much. And this, I think, was pretty closely related to the more that I got involved with learning about the Little Office of the Blessed Virgin Mary and starting to pray and learn the Gregorian chants for it. On top of that, I kept getting sick from my kids starting school and everything. So like when kids start school, they start getting sick from all the other kids, and it spreads it to their family, and then kind of like snowballed, and then we would start getting like back-to-back sicknesses and be sick for like months at a time. But when that happened, I started to develop like laryngitis, and I would lose my voice. A lot of times it was because of wrath, which is when you act upon wrath, that ends up becoming, at first it can be a venial sin, and then eventually becomes a mortal sin. But then afterwards, when I would start yelling because of a lot of stress with like the kids or something, I would actually lose my voice, and I would lose it for like 2 weeks at a time. And it got to the point where I lost my voice like 4 times in 1 year after every illness that I had, whether or not I started yelling or not. So I thought that was like an interesting point in my life. And I'm not sure if it's like a returning like chronic illness, but that was something that happened more recently. And on top of that, it made it really difficult to pray the Little Office, especially singing it. So those were very challenging times that I had. And when you think about spiritual attacks, demons usually try to take you away from your prayer life, take you away from virtue. Like there would be a demon of wrath that would try to pull you down to be able to commit a sin against that wrath. And those are some experiences that I actually personally had. So eventually I got spiritual guidance from a spiritual director. I had started going to a TLM mass that in my diocese. I had gone to the two TLM masses that are two churches that celebrate TLM mass in the Archdiocese of San Francisco. And we ended up finding one that was a bit closer to us. And from there, I actually finally got a spiritual director and had, at first, he had been my confessor. And then eventually I started getting spiritual guidance from him. So now he is officially my spiritual director. And when I went to go confess my sins to him, he asked specifically about, like, did you have like crystals? Did you ever dabble with tarot or yoga or new age things? And I had dabbled in crystals. It was kind of like a fascination. This was like in college, and then tarot a little bit like when I was like in junior high and stuff. And then yoga, I did a little bit in college, but I never really stuck to it. I didn't really like it so much that I ended up switching over to Pilates, which luckily I also asked my spiritual director about Pilates, and Pilates seems to have an okay in terms of being an okay form of fitness with Catholicism. But yeah, yoga was like a no-go because in its roots, yoga is like another form of spirituality. So those are things that like we shouldn't be exploring, or we shouldn't be committing to or doing and practicing as Catholics, because they can open us up to spiritual attacks. Like demons can actually like start to attack us because of that. So after confession, he also, or during that session or that confession meeting with him, he also asked me to get rid of crystals, any crystals that I had, and he also taught me deliverance prayers to help me against my wrath. So I will not go into teaching the deliverance prayers. I think that's something that everyone should be in touch with a spiritual guide or a spiritual director to seek guidance on. And so yeah, that was one of my experiences with starting to learn about deliverance prayers and ways to combat spiritual attacks. And the deliverance prayer actually does help a lot, and I do them during any time of day and also during my morning offering. But I just noticed, like, the more that I got into my faith, I started to have more struggles. Like more recently, I was starting to get really severe exhaustion to the point where I would like sleep at 10 p.m. and wake up at 6 a.m., 6 or 7 a.m. and still be exhausted. And then it got to the point where I started to get nightmares about demons, and which was really crazy because normally I don't even remember the dreams that I have. I just remember whether they were scary, whether they were good, or like how I felt about it. But these ones I actually like kind of vividly remembered some things about demons, and it was like really shocking to me. So those are other things that can be an indicator of spiritual attacks. And yeah, so on top of the severe exhaustion, those episodes actually kept me up at night and made it even more difficult for me throughout the following day to kind of like function because I was so tired. I even had to tell my husband, and I was so scared to tell him because I was like, he was probably going to think I'm crazy. And I told him, I was like, my dear, I am really tired and really exhausted because I feel like because I was actually having dreams about demons, and it was making it hard for me to sleep. And I was just actually really surprised because he looked at me and he wasn't like shocked or anything, but he finally understood why I was having trouble, and he just approached me with a lot of compassion and grace, and I was just so shocked that he responded in that way, and he was very caring about it. So So I told him that I was like, I need to go talk to my spiritual director and figure out what I can do, because it was really scary. But I didn't mention like why that happened. And the reason why was because I was like staying up and scrolling on YouTube, which was one of the things that my confessor mentioned to me. He's like, don't spend too much time on YouTube, spend more time in prayer. And the reason why it happened was because I was staying up late at night trying to learn some things on YouTube. And I even recall my confessor would tell me my confessor would tell me not to be on YouTube so much, to try to cut it out if necessary. But especially like doom scrolling was the worst part about it. And this was like late at night, and that was why like those 2 nights I was having a hard time sleeping and also getting dreams about demons, because I was watching some deliverance YouTube shorts and reels, or sorry, YouTube shorts on some priests that were giving deliverance prayers. And I actually like ended up on their website and started reading them and like actually praying them. And I don't know if that's why I don't really want to recommend trying to do deliverance prayers without a guidance with a priest, because those were the nights that I had those nightmares about demons. So I have yet to go and schedule a meeting with my spiritual director and talk to him about it. As far as like doing deliverance prayers and stuff, definitely from my personal experience, I would just go and get guidance from a spiritual director before committing to any of them, to any random one that you can find online. So aside from that, I hope that was helpful, and thank you for joining, and I hope to see you in the next one. God bless.